from Greenwich University, Karachi, Pakistan. All of you are most welcome to join the first international virtual conference on the COVID and its impact on the business world. Greenwich University of Pakistan is the first private and oldest university who is serving in the education sector since last 32 years, not only in Pakistan but internationally, where it has a sub-campus in the Mauritius as well. Greenwich University has a motivation through the ORIC department to promote the research environment for the faculty, for the students inside the university as well as outside the university, and the entrepreneurship activities as well. In this context, in this regard, Greenwich University has organized and initiated this creative event to invite the international speakers in the form of keynote speakers, session chairs and presenters to contribute their research activities and present their current perspectives on the current scenario of the COVID-19. So, while proceeding to the conference, I would like to request worthy Vice Chancellor, Madam Seema Mughal, to give a welcome note to the international conference.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Dr. Tunio. Assalamu alaikum, hello and good morning to all. Welcome to the international conference on the impact that COVID-19 has had on the business world. I would have very much liked to say and welcome to Greenwich University, but that's another one of the impacts that this pandemic has had on our everyday life. However, technology has bridged that gap, and here we are so far, yet able to conduct this conference seamlessly. Coming to the specific impact that this pandemic has had on the business world, it won't be an easy task, as it's not easy to quantify or put into words the gravity of the impact that it has had. But it will be very enlightening to see what all your impressive minds have to say here today. I would like here to acknowledge and congratulate the ORIC department, Mr. Ali Said, Dr. Muhammad Nawaz Tunio, all the team members for taking this step. As it is the need of the hour to have these discussions at the platform of academia, where minds like yourself can sit together and analyze and work towards solution-based ideas. I would like to welcome and thank the keynote speakers for taking their time out to speak at this conference. It will certainly be an enlightening experience to hear what you all have to say. I would also like to acknowledge the 12 session chairs that we are going to have from different national and international universities of great repute. It's a pleasure to have you all to be a part of this conference. I'm pleased to say that we had an exceptional number of papers, I have been informed, which were submitted to this conference. Out of those, 56 were shortlisted after a stringent process. I congratulate all of those who have been selected. The conference is being held under the umbrella of research, innovation and commercialization. The university has a strong motivation to create a research environment which in turn encourages their students to research on their own. As for the topic in question, to give my 2 cents on the impact that this pandemic has had, I would like to take the liberty to say that this pandemic might have outweighed any of those in the past in terms of the long-lasting impact that it has had. It has altered life in so many ways that we have to begin to accept things as many now say is the normal new or new normal. It has been changed to the course of history, if I might say, because the impact yet has to stop. If we just take into focus the impact it has had just on the sector of education, we can see that the height of the COVID lockdowns, more than 160 countries had mandated some of the school, college, university closures for some 1.5 billion children and youth. This had immense impact on these young people's lives and their future earnings, which again is an impact that will not be easy to quantify and leads to an impact on the business world. Students in countries like ours We were trying to get whatever education that was accessible to them. However, due to this pandemic, many were deprived of their one chance at education for a number of reasons. One of them being not having proper access to the digital infrastructure. All we have to adapt and conform to this new medium of education, online platforms. We may have achieved something for ourselves, but there are billions out there who have not been so lucky and have no access to internet as per the World Health Organization. I also wanted to highlight and maybe hear some good points about it by you people and the impact that it has had on the mental health of people. The effect has been devastating, and also one cannot begin to imagine the effect that this world caused to their everyday lives and in turn to their financial standings. It's like a domino effect. One thing can impact on the pretty much everything, and now all those things are in turn impacting each other in one way or the other. However, there is an optimistic side to this pandemic, where it has had its fair share of negative impacts. It has also given us room to analyze where we can turn around and build a better future. Before I sign off, I would like to take this opportunity to thank those people who made this conference a reality during a lockdown in the city. I'm sure it was not an easy task, but I do applaud all the work that they have put in. Dr. Tunio, along with our Director of Research, Mr. Ali Said, had been a driving force towards this conference, who were complemented by the hard work of Ms. Anam Durrani and Mr. Nawaz Aliaga. IT team deserves an acknowledgement for setting this up for us. It will be great to hear you all speak. Welcome once again and hope everyone has a great conference. Thank you, stay safe and blessed. Allah Hafiz and take care.
Today I'll be talking on based on the finding of the Global University Entrepreneurial Student. So this survey has been started from the Global University Entrepreneurial Student Survey with the Swiss Research Institute from the University of St. Gallen, and focus of the survey is to understand the entrepreneurial attitude, intention and activities of the student. The 8th edition of GACE conducted and become one of the more eminent survey with the participation of 3,000 plus universities across the world from 54 countries, and overall 208,000 plus responses we have received. As I told you, the focus of this survey is to understand and observe the systematic and long-term entrepreneurial intention, attitude and activities of the student and their underlying drivers. It is focused more on the entrepreneurial activities in the process of new venture creation and how students are running these underlying created ventures and what are the activities. Along with that, it focuses on how universities' activities, including incubations and entrepreneurial education activities, are affecting on the students' focus on the entrepreneurship. Mainly, GACE is focused more on to understand the basic conditions of entrepreneurship in the universities and in the country. Overall, looking to the power of the student, because this survey is focused on how students are doing, and the respondents for this survey are also the students in the context of entrepreneurship in universities, and to synthesize the entrepreneurship overall in the venture creation and identify what are the needs of the nations. Overall, GACE is considered to be the largest survey as a research project in the world in the perspective of student participation. If we look how we have actually worked and developed the framework for the GACE survey is based on Azan theory of intention, and we are looking into the context of university, how university is focusing on developing entrepreneurial attitude, intentions of students and making them take entrepreneurship as a career choice. In the family context, how family is influencing, and in the personal context as well as socio-cultural context. If we look to the methodology, overall from these 54 countries, a person from a university is selected, a professor from the university is selected as a country lead who coordinate with the universities in their respective countries. A questionnaire is developed and 54 professors were validated and reviewed, and that questionnaire is actually in English, but if there is need of the questionnaire, that can be translated into the. Overall, the Karachi University is leading case research studies third time in Pakistan. We have been involved in 2015, 16, 18, 19, and now we are conducting in 21 the third wave of case study. Now, if we look from the Asian perspective, we have received around 38,406 responses from 409 Asian universities, and from Pakistan we received 2,389 responses from 17 universities. These universities including IBA Karachi, Zabist, Sindh University, Karachi Virtual University, Kazizam University, as well as IMS Peshawar, Agriculture University Faisalabad, and Balochistan. So if we look at participation is from all over the country, and overall contribution of Pakistan in the GATE survey is around 1.15% response we received from the Pakistan. Now if we look to the global findings, we see that students who are studying in the universities, 9% students directly want that after the completion of their studies, they want to start a venture. And if we look after 5 years of completion, 34.7% students plan to start it. And we look to the central pattern, that is the first employer and then entrepreneur. Creating and their business does not mean that all founders are going to be entrepreneurs. We see that those who wanted to start business right after their studies, they become employer in company, and vice versa. Those who started as an employee and within 2-3 years they become entrepreneur. Overall, we see that developing countries, especially South Asia and Latin American countries, we see high level of intention to become an entrepreneur. If we look from the Asian perspective and the influencing factor, that we see that entrepreneur education and entrepreneur climate at a university is a key role in developing entrepreneurs. Field of study is crucial. We see majority entrepreneurs are coming from business and management sector, and also there is also increase of the entrepreneur coming from the IT sector. Also, we see that gender gap. We see that the gender gap is comparably small in developed countries, but it's larger in the developing countries. And we also see those who are going to be the part of a startup in any way, as a co-founder, as an employee, they have a more intention to become entrepreneur as compared to those who are studying and not part of it. And also we have observed that those who have a parents have founded any venture or running any business, they have a more likely chance to become the entrepreneur. If we look from the Asian perspective, we see overall from Asian countries, 34.38% students want to be an entrepreneur after 5 years, while 10.11% students want to be entrepreneur after right after study. In Pakistan, as I told you, 15% and 37%. But if we look in the Asia, Indonesia is the highest in the number, which 26.7% students want to become entrepreneur right after their study, and 64% students want to be entrepreneur right after 5 years of their studies. Now looking to the share of nascent and active entrepreneurs, in Pakistan we have 14.7 and 59.4% compared to the average in Asian countries. We see 17.7 and 43.6%. But if we look, Pakistan, although doing great, but if we look and compare with China and Indonesia, China has a 69.5 active entrepreneur and 36.9 nascent entrepreneur, and Indonesia has 69.6 and 32.3. So if we look, Pakistan, although it's doing good, but it's far behind than Indonesia and China. Overall, if we look to the university environment, Pakistan, we measured it on the scale of 7. In Pakistan, we have received response that students consider university's environment is at 4.6 compared to the Asian average of 4.43. But if you look to the Indonesia and China, Indonesia has a more favorable environment at 5.5 and China has 5.5. I'll talk on what are the implications of these findings on our environment later on. If we look to the university learning across the countries, we look into Pakistan. Overall, they ranked Pakistan's learning satisfactory by the student at 5. Overall, Asian average is 4.57, and if we look to the Indonesia 5.6 and China 5.5. Now coming to back to the Pakistan perspective, as I had told you that 15.6% students want to become entrepreneur right after that, and 37.3% students intend to become entrepreneur. Looking at the intention level across 54 countries, Pakistan's studying has improved on average, but and it has seen 7.5% increase in active student entrepreneur in Pakistan as compared to the result of last year. But if you look to the entrepreneur offering, around 46% of students have not participated in any entrepreneurship course, workshop, or program at their universities. This indicates that only business or in one way computer students are getting one way or other way entrepreneurial education or courses in their respective universities. Meanwhile, we see that no other student either have an interest or other universities department are showing any willingness to teach entrepreneurship to the medical student, to the law student, to the art student, to the engineering student. And this is very important. If we see the Pakistan's context, a favorable university environment, although there is a very good favorable environment and is increasing, but we have to work a lot on that. And also we have seen a change in the shift, especially the subjective norm aspect of entrepreneurial intention and excellence. Family, friends, and students on average have shown more positive. पहले हम कहते थे कि okay, if you have to become a businessman, why you are studying? Now they are encouraging the student to become entrepreneurs. We see that 31% of students who participated in the survey want to start a new venture in IT sector, and 24% of students in education and training. And the last survey, we see that more students were focusing on the restaurant business, but we have seen that surge of IT and digital technology, we have seen 31% students, which is the highest number, wanted to start it. And we also see in Pakistan that male students have more positive attitude compared to the female students to become entrepreneurs. From policy implication perspective, the indication that first employee and then entrepreneur makes a general sense, but the opportunity cost is rising. Especially in the COVID context, we see that the students who are graduating from the universities have to make a long wait, and this is going to hurt their intention. If we see the ILO's study that overall youth unemployment rate in Pakistan in 2019 was 7.8%, but it is increasing to 10%, and that's the impact of COVID. We see a lower number of jobs, and youth graduating from the universities are getting time to be employed, and those who have an intention to become employed right after a few years are getting after experience, that is hurting their intentions, and the cost is rising. So policymaker has to look how to channelize these students who want to become entrepreneur, and they are willing that they should get experience after, but if they are not able to get the job, how we can channelize their effort to become an entrepreneur. And another disturbing factor is that we have a very low conversion rate of intention into the actual pay. Although we see 15% and 37%, but the conversion rate from intention to the actual has become just around 3-4%. And this shows focus on how we can create an environment for the student so that they become entrepreneurs. Now, if we look, what are the factors that are affecting on their intentions to become an entrepreneur into actual behavior? One of the highest reasons, which is identified by the World Bank and also by the Global Entrepreneur Development Initiative, is the lack of finance. Although we have now started the Kamyab Jawan program and other programs, but still the students are facing difficulties getting funding for the research. And then the other is the ease of doing it. Still, although Pakistan has improved their ranking from 137 to 128, but still there are a lot of regulatory bottlenecks which are creating impact on the supporting the student. And another is the lack of knowledge. Although many students who are in business and management, they have a very good knowledge of entrepreneurship. But those who are in other fields, they are not being taught. They are not being given knowledge how to start a business, how to set up a venture. And this emphasizes that more entrepreneurship courses and programs across different departments. It's not only business or IT who are going to become an entrepreneur. These can be a medical student, can be a law student, can be an art student, and we have to provide it. And then also another problem with our university is that we are trying to develop a model. If that model is successful in US, we said, okay, that can be workable in Pakistan. If that model is successful in Europe, we say that model is good. But we have to look what are the needs of the region. We cannot say that what is the need in Karachi, what is the need in Islamabad, that is also required. Sakkar is more an agro-based city. It's surrounded by the agriculture, it's surrounded by the community which are undereducated, underprivileged and have other problems. So we have to focus on developing and encouraging the ideas which are focused on agriculture, which are focused on, see for example, nowadays we are in the date season. So there are a lot of dates getting wasted. They are not being properly utilized. Guava in Larkana, mango in Mirpur Khas. So there's a need that we should develop an incubation entrepreneur or startup course and encourage the student to find the local solution, problems of the local solution, local problem solution, so that they could develop a venture which is not only useful for them, create a business opportunities for them, but also society. McKinsey's 2020 report said we have to work in cooperation, universities, government, industry, and society. And that is what we call a quadruple helix approach. Developing and promoting entrepreneurial system is key, but it cannot only be done by the university in isolation. It cannot be done government, it cannot be done industry. And we see there is a very big gap in the industry and academic cooperation. Industry has a other direction, university has another direction, society has a different problem. So I propose that we have to transform universities into a symbol of entrepreneurship and innovation by creating an ecosystem which support and which encourage the business creation process, considering the local market need, and provide technical advisory and infrastructure support to the student for turning their idea into business venture, what is required. And in the end, I will say, now university has to focus that students are not job seekers, they are rather job creators. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, and a very warm welcome from my end to this international virtual conference on the impact of COVID-19 on the international business world. I'm very glad that faculty and students will be discussing the impact felt, the track or the thematics that I'd like to introduce first as we proceed in this two-day conference is the hospitality industry and related to tourism. This is the hardest hit area. So we'll be channeling the papers from this thematics. The session chair, I'd also like to introduce the session chair here, who shall be concluding with her words of wisdom, is Dr. Iffat Sabir. She's joining us from the College of Business at Al Ain University in the United Arab Emirates.
Congratulate to all of you for arranging this international conference during this period. Definitely it's a win for the institution, it's a win for the researchers, and it's a win for the scholars. I'm very happy to see the theme which you have organized in the first session of your presentation. Very important, very relevant to the current situation. Before moving on, let me tell you that I am associated with Al Ain University as an assistant professor, and I also got an opportunity to work in Oman for a couple of years. And before that, I was working in Islamabad with a couple of universities like NAS and Hamdard and Iqra University, and I forgot to remember the names, so many of them. So eventually I got a chance to work with Pakistani students as well. So I'm very happy to be here and to get an opportunity to discuss instead of finding or highlighting the weak points, I would be looking forward to highlight more onto the strengths of the presenters and just tell as a listener that what was the missing part and what would have made it more interesting. So I will go presentation by presentation, starting off with the first presentation, which was on analyzing perceived risk of traveling, which was given by Mr. Muhammad Faisal Sultan. The analysis was excellent. The reliability and the validity tests were very good. Everything was very clear. And when we talk about the objectives of the study, they were also very clear. But in between, he did talk about the Chinese model of data collection. I was not very sure what he was referring to. What does that mean? If Faisal is around and he wants to make it clear to the audience, I would be happy to listen to him again. Faisal Sultan, would you like to discuss more on it? That what do you mean by Chinese model of data collection?
Assalamualaikum. I'm audible?
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
Ma'am, previously the research work was conducted in developed sides of the world, and they used the model and analysis technique, the data collection technique, similar to the research work conducted in China. Thus, that the theme was not applicable to underdeveloped, least developed, or developing sides of the world. Thus, it has been predicted that the theory of planned behavior should not be used, and stochastic model must be introduced for theory building, as we have various variables like traveling anxiety and traveling types, which may affect the intensity or intention to travel. Thus, I indicated that.
Okay, so this is how you labeled it as a Chinese model of data collection.
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay, all right, Faisal. So anyways, it was a very good work. I liked your model. Your model is very much relevant for the research which you have done. I just have a few suggestions. If you would have been able to identify or you would have been able to tell what was the difference between whether you were talking about the domestic traveling or you were talking about the international tourism. I was not clear throughout, but I assumed that you are talking about the international tourism.
Yeah,
so just correct me if I'm wrong. You were talking about it. All right.
You are right.
Okay,
perfect. Right. I was talking about international tourism.
Yes. Faisal, one more suggestion I have for you is that please do talk about the compliance issues as well. Because when we talk about the government policies and when we talk about the international tourism, yes, people are scared, but we are more hard hit by the policies which have been given by the government and which different governments they keep coming up with. So it's a very important factor. Do consider this when you are trying to identify the impact of COVID on the tourism industry. But it was a work very well done. Congratulations. Now I would like to move on towards presentation number 2, which was from Dr. Alok Kumar. That was on the impact on hospitality industry, and he was talking about the survival strategies, and the best thing was that he was able to come up with the acronym of COVID, that is having a survival strategy named COVID to deal with the COVID situation. It would have been very, very interesting to see that what is the theoretical background which allowed him to come up on these 5 strategies which he identified. And then a few of these strategies like cost cutting is very clear, domestication, virtualization, integration, they are very clear in itself that what he was trying to say. But when we talk about orderliness, how that was relevant, that is a bit more of a question. And one more thing is that it's not only for Dr. Alok but for everyone others as well. When you are preparing your presentations, please try to add numbers, try to add the data and the references. That makes your study very interesting, because when you were talking, you were giving the numbers, you were giving the references. But those who are looking at the presentations, it's always advisable to put that kind of information on your slides as well. That makes it very, very interesting. So that is something which was very much missing from our presentation number 2. Then he did talked about the lower mobility. Again, I would suggest it's a good idea to show in terms of the percentage and some kind of comparative analysis, so that we are able to see that how COVID has has hit us so hard that the mobility has been reduced within the country or traveling outside the country and so on. So that would have been very interesting if this would have been added. Otherwise, suggestion that we have to be able to survive in this situation, and then because the tourism industry is very resilient and this is 100% correct, but then when we come up with some kind of strategies, and this is all the research about, then we need to tell that how this should be adopted by the people in industry in terms of implications. That is something which was missing in most of the presentations, because you have an excellent objective for your research, you have done an amazing job in data collection, your analysis is excellent, but then at the end, go back from the mindset of the industrial people and then discuss that whatever you have identified, how they should use this information to make the most out of the research that you have done. All right, so this is the support that you are giving to the industry. So that would have been very interesting. Moving on to presentation number 3. First of all, Muhammad Hamza and Naila Alam, I really liked your presentation skills. Keep it up. All right, excellent going. Keep it up. And it was very nice to hear the presentations from both of you. For Muhammad Hamza, one thing again, the most important thing which was missing in your presentation again was data. Well, you were referring to the numbers, you did talk about the tables that you have been able to compile on the basis of the data mining which you have done, but I didn't see that on your presentation. It would have been very interesting if I would have been able to see that and some kind of comparative, because when you say that you are trying to assess and identify that what have been the impact on tourism industry during COVID-19, it would have been very interesting if I was able to see some kind of comparative analysis. Well, your choice, whether between the developed and underdeveloped or developing countries, or just pick few countries and try to show us and try to compare that which one has been hit hard, because data is available and most of the data is available without any charge. That is the best thing. So the point is that that kind of analysis, that kind of comparison makes your study very, very interesting. Well, you referred, you have done, it must be with you, but I would suggest please put it on the presentation. That would make it more interesting. Now, Muhammad, what we need to see is that when you have certain problem statement and you have done all the work to come up and to tell us that what is this conclusion, then we need to have some kind of synchronization between your objectives and then your conclusions. That sync was missing. Well, the problem which you identified was how the tourism industry has been hit during the COVID-19. The expectation was that I would be able to see some kind of information with respect to countries, with respect to different kinds of tourism, in terms of years and so on. And then you would be concluding that this is what has happened and this is how we need to move forward. But the conclusion part was not very strong. So I would suggest you if you just work a bit more on that. Presentation number 4, Naila. Miss Naila, your presentation, I already told you that the presentation skills are very good. Yes, you very well, you identified your research problem, and you identified there are certain constructs which are having an impact on how people they perceive the advertising value of the social media. One very interesting thing which I noticed from your presentation was that in terms of the sample, you were able to get the data, you were able to get the survey done from the people from the age bracket of 39 and above. This is very interesting because one of the biggest argument of the people who are those who are propagating or those who are supporting, let's use this word, social media and its positive implications is that age and a certain age group They are more comfortable in using the social networking sites, and they are more comfortable in using the systems, and that's why we have more access to them compared to certain group of people, let's say your generation Y or the baby boomers, that we do not get hold of them when we are collecting the data using online platforms. You were able to do that, so that was very interesting. In your sample, you did mention social media travelers. Well, I'm not sure if that was a mistake or you meant to say social media users. I was not very sure. I would like to hear from you again, Naila, if you want to make that clear. Miss Naila, would you like to make that clear? What was that? That was social media users, or you meant social media travelers? Because I'm not very sure what social media traveler means. Alright, I think she is not around. But that was the thing, and it would have been, well, again, it's my suggestion. It's up to you if you want to take it or you want to leave it. It would have been very interesting if you would try to connect this study with COVID-19, because in COVID-19 we have seen that massively organizations are moving towards their online presence earlier, which was not there. So how that has impacted on the consumer perception, and now once they are moving towards the social networking sites, and they are moving towards the internet, and they are moving towards their presence on the internet. So at that point in time, how the advertising value can be enhanced through the social media, this kind of connection would have made it even more interesting. And again, at the end, one thing again I will repeat is that please try to show the implications from the industrial perspective. Now, those who are not very, because what we are doing is to provide the solutions to the industry. If we are not able to make them understand that this is what my research is saying, and this is all what you should do if you want to get the positive results, then the entire effort is a waste. So that is something which you need to take care of. Presentation 5, that is crisis management strategies opted by hospitality industry, again by Mr. Muhammad. Well, I really liked that you identified that these are the areas on which the attention need to be diverted, but you were not able to come up with some kind of crisis management strategy or solution, if I would say. All right, so that is something. The title, it gives the feeling that today I am going to learn that how I should manage the crisis within my organization, which is relevant to the hospitality industry. But once I got into it, I was able to see that yes, there are few areas which need to be, or which should be my attention towards when I am developing the crisis management strategy, but I was not able to see some kind of solution. So if you had created that solution and added it into your study, it would have been very, very interesting. So to wrap it up, I would say these were very nice presentations. I loved listening to all of them, every bit of it. The topic selection was very nice, very relevant, and if you move on with the same topics, it will be very easy for you to get these studies published in well-reputed journals. So congratulations to all of the presenters, and congratulations to the organizers for doing a good job. Thank you so much.
The track is Government Interventions on Macros and Policy Initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, other than the presentations and the lively discussion that we've had since morning, we understand that COVID-19 has had consequential effects across different sectors and communities around the world. We also understand that these consequential effects have had a particular effect on developing countries. Just to exemplify that, almost 40 out of 43 countries in the Asia Pacific are experiencing an unprecedented increase in debt to GDP ratio as a consequence of the economic downturn because of COVID-19. So at the national governmental level, there are several initiatives that need to be put in place in terms of stabilizing the foreign exchange reserves, in terms of stabilizing the economies, in terms of, adopting to the new normal, adapting different business modalities in terms of how we're going to move forward. So in this session, we do have quite a few interesting presentations moving forward. And these presentations will be followed by the session chair's comments and remarks and reflections on the presentations. We have the privilege of having Dr. Mir Dost, who's an academician, entrepreneur, corporate trainer, and a management consultant as the session chair. You're welcome, sir. First of all, now I would like to move to the first paper. Dr. Mir Dost, for the conclusive remarks. I think that should suffice, the insights that you've covered already. That brings us to the conclusion of this particular track. We are, without any further ado, going to phase into the next track, which is 3, componentially continuing with the governmental interventions on macros and policy initiatives. Before I start, some of the aspects that I wanted to cover. We do understand, like I said earlier, COVID-19's shockwaves across economies have affected, agriculture industry as well as the services sector, bankrupting businesses around the world. And when we're discussing in such a conference the implications at the developing countries level, we do see, foreign exchange reserves have shrunken. We see that, severe debt distress issues are rising. There's a lot of loss of revenues in terms of international trade and remittances, and there's a considerable decline in the business activity at home. So discussions like this would basically provide some sort of modalities, some sort of insights for how we're going to adapt with the new normal while trying to sustain our recovery policies moving forward. On that note, I have the first presenter in this track. Just also to introduce the track chair, the session chair, I have the pleasure of having Dr. Amir Rashid, who's head of the Department of Business Administration at Greenwich University. He will be chairing the session, and we would definitely be looking forward to your incisive remarks towards the end. Thank you for being there, sir. Now I'll move on to the first paper, which is to be presented by Mr. Faisal Ansari. And the title would be Banking Credit Restructuring Policy Amid COVID-19 Pandemic in Pakistan.
President Ansari, your presentation was good and was having good enough knowledge related to the remittance and the COVID effect on the remittance and all. But you mentioned that during COVID, the remittances were remained medium, whereas the State Bank of Pakistan, they said that consecutive 6 months they were having 2 billion cash inflows from the foreign banks, and it was good enough, and but was not medium as compared to the previous months. What do you say that how, from where you got the data related to the remittance that it was medium? Okay, anyhow. Okay, and your presentation was more likely to as a report, not the research report. It was like you gathered data, and then you prepared a report. You didn't research properly. It was like that. Rest, it was quite okay. The information was good. Only the point which I wanted to highlight the remittance, because remittance was high during the COVID.
Okay, the second presentation will be presented by Madiha. Madiha, you were having 4 theories, and it is a very big number for any research. Normally, in research, we use 3 theories, 2, or even some models, they apply 1 theory. But 4, 5 like theories are, these are very, very big number. Anyhow, because I am not having your report, that's why I'm just, I would just say about the theories that please, if you are having and you are going to conduct another research, then please consider this point as well. Secondly, you didn't mention that how and what kind of sampling technique you used for the 27 banks, that how you selected those 27 banks. You just mentioned the sample size, but the sampling technique was missing. It is very imperative because sometimes your sampling technique guides you properly or sometimes misguides you. It depends that how you selected your sampling technique, how you reached to your sample size. And the weak area was your implications. You missed the implications of your research, because it's very important when you conduct a research, and after once your research is conducted and is complete, then the next phase is that how it will help to the practitioners, to the managers, to the industry sector. That area is very weak in your research, in your presentation. If you can consider it again, then rewrite and improve this area. Rest, everything was okay. Both presentations, they prepared well and having good findings. And one last thing also for the Madiha, that your literature was contradicting and was not supporting for your few of your hypotheses. But what I perceived from your results, that in your findings, all the hypotheses were supported. If I'm wrong, then please correct me. And you didn't mention the unsupported hypothesis, and they were supported by, the results were supported by the previous contradictory results. So also mention that, or if you are having or considering in future, then please consider it again and rewrite and refer and build your argument based on the previous literature.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nawaz and I'm a lecturer at Greenwich University. First of all, apologies for my voice. I'm a little under the weather today. But nonetheless, let's begin track 4, which is consumer behavior. And with that, I'd like to introduce the session chair of this track. It's Dr. Iram Sheikh, who is the Assistant Professor and Research Director of the Modern University, Tunio Muhammad Khan, Pakistan. And with that, I am going to begin with the first presentation. Presentation is by Ms. Tiwari Kirti, Impact of Brand Taglines on Indian Consumer, a Case Study Approach.
First of all, I would like to congratulate to all the scholars who have presented their research papers in this conference. First of all, I will come towards the first scholar who presented on the impact of the brand tag lines on the Indian consumers, a case study approach. That was Tiwari, Ms. Kirti Tiwari. Okay. So there are some suggestions and the questions, but I will not go for the questions. I would like to suggest to the scholars that what they have to work on. Like they said that the taglines like the guessworks are the only thing which can predict or which can measure that whether the customer or consumer can avail or purchase the things. Or they were talking about the Tata car, nano car, that I want to ask that only the guessing thing can measure the performance of any kind of a brand, their loyalty, their performance, their price, because she was talking about the price, the commitment, the advertising taglines that they were saying in the advertisement that they will satisfy the need of the customers, specifically the middle class families, but actually they were not performing. But as per my knowledge, it was a cheapest car, and the performance of very good. There are some other factors which affect the failure of the plant, because I have already taught this subject and give this case study to my students. That's why I have a good knowledge about this Tata Nano case study. So I don't think so the only guesswork can measure the performance of any kind of brand or product. So I think there should be the proper understanding of this variable. And next thing, the gap was missing, like the population, audience, sample, technique, and the one more thing, that how they gather the data, whether they ask from the owner of the Tata Nano car, or they collected the data from a different audience. So these things are very important to highlight when you are presenting your presentation. So I would suggest you to work on these things. Now coming towards the second paper, which was given by the Avinash Kumar, and his topic was the factors affecting the consumer behavior amongst the luxury brands. Okay. Yes, so he said that there are the different things during the pandemic, I believe. No? Okay. So he said that there are the different things that affect the behavior of the people while they are purchasing the luxury products, like the price, style, history. So do you think that the history or a background of any product can influence the purchasing power of any customers? Of course, the marketing strategies are having a great influence on the purchasing power. I don't think so the performance of the previous products, like the product performing previous badly, can affect the performance, purchase power of awareness of the people who are going to purchase the product. Because if they are improving their products, it can increase the purchase power or the behavior of the people. One more thing I want to ask, that there is no any highlight, you didn't highlight that what is your contribution, what is your research gap, like what is the sample size, what is the targeted population. So these are very important things which I have seen in my track, that the people are not talking about the gaps, the theories, the targeted population, sample size, which kind of a technique they have used for getting the sample. So these are very important things. If you are enrolled in MPhil or PhD and you are going to write up for the thesis, so these are very important things, and these must be present in your presentations as well. The topic of the third scholar was similar to the second one, which was given by the Samira, and I find much better than the previous one. But she said that the loyalty of the customers can be compromised during the pandemic. If I would take my example, that if I am loyal with some products, so how my loyalty will change during the pandemic? I can understand that this is the very critical situation, but I don't think so that my loyalty with my favorite brands will be changed. I can purchase those products online. Now you have said that you have collected the data from the patients, the persons who are affected by the COVID. So I think these are the people who are very conscious, and we are struggling with this disease. So they only concerned about their health. They are not concerned with the products at this step or in this situation. So I think you should think about the healthy people and their relation with the loyalty, and what kind of things they can do during this pandemic would be much better than considering the patients who are struggling for their life. I don't think so they remember the loyalty and products, luxury, especially luxury products. So these things are very I feel that you should go for the healthy people rather unhealthy people. And the fourth one is given by the Irich. She was talking about the influence of the social media marketing on the consumer behavior. Okay, so I would like to know that what is the problem statement basically, because we all know that the social media has a great influence on the purchasing power of the people, specifically in this situation, COVID era. So I didn't find the new thing in this research, because we all know that this is the direct relation of the media with the purchasing power of the people. So you must tell us that what is your contribution, means what is the gap which you will going to fill out. So and your literature is very old, because when you try to read more and more latest papers, so you will understand that what they have not researched. So you will come to know with the new ideas, new gaps, so it will help you to do some new things. So that will be your contribution. Okay, so I think this is already done by many people, so I didn't find any new thing or the contribution from your side. Along with that, your literature was not updated. There was no any kind of a theory used. So you must work on it. In the concluding marks, I would like to suggest to all of the scholars which were presenting these papers that please work on your research gaps, your theories, your variables, their relations, specifically the target audience, the sample size. So these are very important. Without them, you cannot justify your papers. Okay, so this is a great opportunity to you guys to work on it, because in the next, if this university will announce the conference or any other university, so it will help you out. I hope my suggestions you will take it positively and work on it. Thank you so much, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much for this nice introductory word. Okay, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be with you in a somehow different context of daily working, but listening to the presentation before, I thought it is not so different. It was a paper on Croatia, Kosovo, and Macedonia, and those countries. I mean, I'm from Austria, as you said already. Those countries are the neighboring countries to Austria, and so I see that the field of research, of your research, is not really restricted to your. So taking up other regions in the whole world. So let me start with my presentation. The corona crisis brought up new challenges for people in their daily life procedures when normal routines came to halt. New answers had to be created. Some were with positive learning effects, some others just negatively. In sociology, one can speak with Emil Durkheim in the terminology of anomie, when normal forms of activity do not work anymore and former not used procedures consort to normal ones. The outbreak and spread of the corona pandemic have converted views and practices of our routines so that one may experience a crisis in psychological, social, and economic terms. Especially psychology is asking how people perceive and adapt and respond to crisis. If values and norms convert within very short time into their former opposite, the long time acquired compass, which we all have received through different levels of socialization processes, does not work any longer. For example, those lessons which praise the strengths of strong and close friendships for well-being are converted into the opposite, Distance, distance, distance is the parole. And the own isolation at home is a very regressive form to deal with hazards by hiding the own body. Physical presence and performance at the company working place has changed from a positive to a negative interpretation. Doing vacation abroad is still not really in line with political correctness. The adequate reaction now is wearing masks and plastic gloves, trying to avoid different human circuits as possible, reducing mobility to a minimum. Whole societies got paralyzed. Streets and cities became ghost places when nobody was to see anymore outside. In all, we have all experienced in different degrees somehow frozen societies. Just in the beginning of the pandemic, about 60 months ago, I gave a long interview in which I prognosed that due to home office work and lockdown practices, we will experience an increase of births as well as divorces. Both issues have happened meanwhile on a significant scale, at least if I take statistics from Austria. So divorces have more than doubled. Just to come to my slide now. Wait a second. So that is a table of my talk. In my timely restricted talk, I don't want to go into further details of sociological, historical, and psychological perspectives. Instead, I will focus the discussion at a few macro-level phenomena referring to the pandemic as a really global phenomenon to draw a few lessons. Before I start with that, I like to refer to a few methodological remarks. COVID-19 is a phenomenon which points to the neglected links in the global economy and society, but also in economics and neighboring disciplines. Those neglected links are the inner bonds and lines which keep the spheres of society and economy together, and which are interconnected, although they are very often treated and discussed separately in different discourses. Contemporary discussion has forgotten to think universally and to integrate items of different spheres into one common field of conversation and observation. That is a figure which you find in the forthcoming publication of me, where I was dealing with the different academic sciences, with economics, psychology, and sociology, and I was hinting to the fact that they overlap somehow, and that they always are integrated, and that each topic of each discipline has effects to others. And that is something which should be also integrated and linked to medicine, medicine with the subdisciplines which are so familiar now, virology and epidemiology, and also biology. So you see, all those different academic disciplines are very much overlapping and integrated into each other. And that is something which we are not really having been able to read as a lesson for interdisciplinary talking. The singular, even in the world of biology, it zoonoses from animal to human being, firstly at Wuhan, in the People's Republic of China, has caused surprising and non-intended consequences for particular events and calamities. The world society and the world economy must be viewed as a complex system of reciprocal interactions. COVID-19 provides a wonderful example of the dynamic interrelations of the modern world economy, where all parts of the world are related to each other. International routes of trade and exchange have been revealed as being extremely weak and vulnerable in view of the system of the world economy. Production, trade, and transport are parts of international cooperation and working relations which are designed as just-in-time processes where everything is a little cog in a big wheel. And if one element is not working properly anymore, the whole system of economic and social interaction comes crashing to a halt. So that was somehow the lesson, if you want, a positive lesson of COVID-19. And now to my talk, or the title of my talk on creative destruction. What does it mean, creative destruction? Creative destruction is taken by Joseph Schumpeter, the Austrian-American economist, and people say beside John Maynard Keynes, he was one of the two major or most prominent economists in the 20th century. Creative destruction is this paradox and ambivalent interplay of old and new. So entrepreneurs and new and old firms are always coming and going, occupations are always coming and going, transition from old to new ones, branches, economic sectors, and cycles are changing, and economic processes are in a permanent trouble, indifferent balances we have between births and deaths, and this brings together also at the same time winners and losses and some different issues between. And that means, and that it goes back to this Joseph Schumpeter, who said the essential point to grasp is that in dealing with capitalism, we are dealing with an evolutionary process. What does it mean? He said capitalism is not really a system, but capitalism is a method of economic change, and not only is but never can be stationary. So, in other words, he says somehow capitalism is a process, and it is an organic process, like in biology, where you always have processes of evolution and survival for the fittest, and so on and so on. And that can be taken as the basic crescendo of capitalist development worldwide. But now comes Corona, and Corona complicates this play and makes it somehow dirty. Because that is again still before Corona. COVID has changed, if you want, the rules of the game newly and in short time. So we have new forms of winners and losers, and that on both sides, on the winning side and on the losing side. For example, flight and tourism industry suffered extremely. Many firms went bankruptcy, as well as restaurants and small and big shops. And in opposite, electronic commerce and other sectors benefited a lot. You see, by that, Corona brought with it new rules of the game of capitalist competition. Discussion on questions about nature and sources of new business opportunities has hinted to the fact of external enablers. External enablers are sudden changes in the business environment which may have positive or negative effects on the business population. External enabler is a wording of Per Davidson, the Swedish-Australian author who published in 2015 a very well cited paper in the Journal of Business Venturing. So COVID-19 can be treated as such an external enabler. That is something which really gives new weight into the discussion and new weight into the process of economic and social development. So now I'm going really very fast to the major topic of Corona, and I have data here by the Johns Hopkins University, which is the best data source worldwide on Corona, and you see different colors with different intensities of COVID-19 deaths, and this shows that the country, and starting early 2021 till now, and here you see the country where everything has started. China is much better off than some others. Russia is very bad. Argentina is very bad. Some African countries as well. This measured are the intensity, the numbers of deaths among 1 million inhabitants. So So Pakistan is somehow between the best and the worst countries, so on a middle scale. The problem is that here we are dealing in this occupation just with percentages, and if you go to absolute figures, then it is quite different. Then we have 4,200,000 deaths till the end of July, and then the US, Brazil, India are the negatively leading countries with those deaths, and that is something which one have really to double check absolute against relative percentages. And the interesting thing is, if you compare countries of the, let's say, Western world, the advanced economies, Europe, especially in North America, with emerging market economies and low-income developing countries, then you see that in the beginning, in the year 2020, there was in all those groups of countries a strong form of fiscal support and policy support for Corona or COVID-19 problems, going to individual people as well and households, as well as to especially firms and companies. And if you see how it has developed over the years 2021 and 2022, then you see that the form of policy support in emerging market economies has shrunk remarkably, and in low-income developing countries it has nearly disappeared. What does it mean? So the policy support is still quite high in advanced economies, but in the others it is more or less worked out. I think due to the missing financial capacity in those countries, and that is really a problem. I was, for example, listening a talk by the Prime Minister of Pakistan given at the World Economic Forum at Davos. I guess it was last year, when he reported that the situation, for example, in Pakistan compared to Western advanced economies is in that way that at least 20 million of people do not really have formal working contracts. So they are just paid on a daily or weekly basis for their doing. And if there is no doing at all due to COVID-19 restrictions, they have no money, and there are no public support schemes to give subsistence. And if there is no subsistence in countries like Pakistan or in others, those people are really restricted to live about their savings. And if there are no savings, then they really got a problem, because other family members cannot support because they suffer the same situation. So that is also a problem which is a circle into poverty and maybe even into hunger. That is a completely different situation as we in emerging markets and low-income developing countries are even worse off. So that is interesting to compare those data, and I have those data taken by the International Monetary Fund. Give me another chart where you see the two-track pandemics, and that is even more striking. You see in the world 13% of the whole world population has got the second shot already in COVID-19 vaccination. And how does it distribute worldwide? Then you see that 40% of the population in advanced economies has received the second shot, whereas in emerging markets just 11%, and in low-income developing countries. What is the lesson? That is the lesson that we see here the global forms of inequality, social and economic inequality are recapitulated, are doubled and tripled through these forms of unequal infrastructure in receiving this basic vaccinations and medical treatments. So we knew before even that the world is not a harmonious and coherent building of different partners being with the same capacity. But these figures really underline the strong imbalances, social inequalities in receiving vaccinations. However, and that is my last slide, if we ask in recent times, just to add to this slide, in recent times it is even more important to be vaccinated, even for regular members of the society, because the labor market just has changed so far that only people are accepted as regular workers and employees sorry, having a good vaccination, because that gives the entrance bill to be part of the employment anymore. And that is something which we can learn also by historical observations. I've just studied a very nice report on the yellow fever in the US in the 18th century, where really people, so a third of the population died in the course of the yellow fever, but other people really wanted to get through the illness, to say, I'm clean now, I have the immunization capital. And that is so much important. People in our societies worldwide need this immunization capital to get an entrance to the labor market. And if you don't have them, you are in danger of getting out. The question now is, does this imbalance has any negative consequences for the worldwide growth rates and productivity and success of countries? So it could be that COVID-19 has really declined the economic capacity of emerging market countries and low-income developing countries, but it is not, surprisingly not. And yes, okay. These are also international monetary brand new data, the world output, the latest World Economic Outlook update growth projection. And if you really see here, compared advanced economies with emerging market developing economies and low-income developing countries, you see that the projected growth rates, especially for 22, in emerging market and developing economies, as well as for emerging as well as for low-income developing countries, is higher than for advanced economies. So that is, if you want, the funny irony, which we also get to know. It has not, COVID-19, affected the productivity and the growth aspirations and capacity of the, let's say, comparatively less developed countries worldwide, COVID-19, but the opposite is true. We have still much higher countries, and not only in China, India, the Asian five, but also in all the others. Russia is but lower than the average, Brazil especially, but many on average, you see, the emerging market and middle income economies have higher growth rates at the same time as we all suffer COVID-19. Thank you so much. I have arrived at the end of my talk. Thank you.
These were the three presentations in this track of the technology and the startups. Now I will invite Dr. Manzoor for his remarks and concluding this session.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammad Nawaz, for a nice introduction and of course offering me this opportunity to work with you and learn a lot from the youngsters. A lot of thanks to Greenwich University also for creating such a beautiful platform where youngsters can share and learn from their seniors and the vice versa. For the generation like us, it is very encouraging to see that the youth of today is actually positively responding to the crisis like this pandemic one. Otherwise, it is very difficult to see that they do not go into the despair, but rather than they are responding it positively, trying to learn it through their research techniques and also devising the strategies for this pandemic. So it's all very encouraging for all of us that our youth is not disappointed. As far as today's three papers are concerned, I believe that all these three studies are the need of the time. The topics are very relevant to the time, specifically for this pandemic timing, this whole world is going on. I will give you some short comments on the basis of these presentations. It would have been appropriate that we could go through the whole studies and comment properly. As far as my findings are concerned from these three studies, I find that these three studies are very generic in nature. I mean, they are exploring the very prima facie level of studies they are conducting. I also find them over ambitious in terms of giving their recommendations on the basis of the results they have conducted. For example, first study that shows that is the impact of COVID-19 on e-commerce industry. Of course, it is general observation which matches with the results of this study that there is a positive impact of COVID-19 and this pandemic on e-commerce industry. We also observe when we use social media, a lot of advertisements we can see it shows that the sales are increasing. But we don't know what the other factors are. The study could be made more beautiful and attractive if the authors go into the details of which industry is impacted, how by this timing, and what strategies have been devised by the companies to come on the e-commerce and social platforms. Because this was very specific time, anybody who is on e-commerce, people were confined to their homes, therefore they responded positively. But we have to learn from this that how this could be replicated in this future. So I will suggest that this study must go into some details. Another study was a beautiful presentation done by these people, that the factors affecting consumer behavior in flagship mobile category. Of course, they have used personality of the consumers for this top brand like the Samsung and the Apple. But we will be interested to see more what other factors that they have not studied. During this pandemic, especially the personality, how it could be, how it was observed that the personality is responding during this COVID because everybody is home. So this one also requires some details. Finally, the uses and influence of social media during COVID-19, another excellent presentation by the youngsters and the good work they have done for it. I find a little bit confusion in their methodology. They were confusingly using the secondary research and data collection or primary research in it. So I will suggest them to make these things more clear for the authors. Otherwise, I believe all these three studies were excellent in nature, and just with a little feedback on these studies can make them more important and maybe publishable in some journals. In the end, thank you very much to you, and congrats to all the presenters for these nice presentations and their work, especially during this COVID-19.
We will proceed to further papers for HRM psychology paper. So the first paper we have from Mr. Ahmed Ali Qazi. The title is Headband Review for detecting psychological disorders in COVID-19 patients of Hyderabad and Karachi.
And I think, Ms. Faria, if you are there, you can just note down what I exactly say. I think the idea is very good. I really appreciate the way you have just taken up restructuring employee productivity. And you have taken a case study of one company. And I think that if you are there, if you can respond me, or if you can talk to me, or your if Anam can just allow. What I see here, that you have spoken about a case study, but I see that that case study is not properly documented. That's not documented. So what I suggest you, especially because this is a very important area, I would like to suggest you please read Bent Fluberg, a Danish professor, who has given 5 misunderstandings when you have started deciding to pick up any single or multiple or more than one case study. So for that, it can be really very important for you when you are working on this area. You need to go to define what case study is and how you have documented the case that you have investigated yourself. And I suggest, that's my strong recommendation to you, that you please refer Bent Fluberg professor. He's a Danish professor from Denmark. And he has given 5 basic misunderstandings when you have started investigating a particular case or multiple case studies. So that's my one observation for you. Second question that I would like to ask you, that's from Ms. Faria. It's about the literature review. I really wonder that how you have investigated the relevant literature as you are just investigating the productivity. But I can see that you have highlighted many variables in your literature review. So what I see that's missing in your literature review, you should have used some rich databases, and you would have said that what was your search strategy to identify the relevant literature. Because in the area of research, what we guide our students, that you need to align your core objectives with the literature review, and that you need to do especially when you are finalizing your research projects. So that's my observation about your presentation. But it was nice presentations, and that's my only humble advice to you, that you need to align your objectives with the literature review. And secondly, as I say, that you need to document the case study that I saw it's missing in your presentation. Proper documentation should be made of your case study. And yes, you can also follow Bent Fluberg. Now I would like to come to the Abu Bakr and his presentations. There was many co-authors along with him. So I think it was a really interesting area too. That was white collar crime and its impact on employees' organization performances. One thing that I found from Abu Bakr's presentation, that theoretical deliberations is missing again. Because if you talk about performance management, it's my advice that you can also take reflection from image theory, and that can give you added advantage to your project if you take some reflection from established theories. That's exactly overall my observation from all these presentations, that established theories or theoretical deliberations are missing. So what I suggest, Abu Bakr, that you need to take reflection from image theory. I can also send you some of articles which can really help you to take reflection from image theory. Number 2 question that I would like to ask from Abu Bakr, and that's my observation. Problem statement. I don't know what was the criteria that how you formulated your problem statement. That's missing. You only say one statement or one sentence. That's exactly it's not sufficient as a problem formulation. What you need to do in a problem statement, that what exactly problem you identified in the light of literature as well as in the light of empirical evidences, and based on it you can develop your objectives. So it means that if you have identified some weak areas or problems that are existing in Pakistani context, and you as a researcher, you need to identify that how would you bridge that gap. So that should be presented in the light of literature or empirical evidences. So I think that that's my strong observation for your presentation. And what I see here, that you need to bring some latest debate on literature review. I can see that there are some old literatures. So Anam, I think I'm done with my overall observation for this sessions, and overall I think I must say and appreciate Greenwich University by taking up this initiative and starting this online conferences trend. Yes, so I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Mushtaq. It was wonderful having you, and thank you so much for giving such detailed insight. I'm sure it will be helpful for students to improve their work. Thank you so much once again, sir. Now we would like to continue our session. Of course, session is HRM and psychology. It's a continuation. For this session, we have Dr. Heather Shah, Senior Assistant Professor, who will be chairing this session.
We will continue our conference with presentation number 34, the title of it, which is Adoption in Marketing Mix by Multinational Companies, a case study on a multinational company operating in Pakistan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Salman. Good evening, everyone from Jakarta. My name is Leni, and it's already evening here. And I'm affiliated with the Academy Pariwisata Indonesia. It is a higher education institution in Jakarta, and I'm also in some journals. I'm the chief editor of Eduturisma, an international tourism journal, and I'm also in the editorial office of the AJBR, Asian Journal of Business Research, and I'm one of the editorial review board member in JRTM, Journal of Tourism Responsible Tourism Management, based in Malaysia. So Assalamualaikum, and I'm very happy to be invited here. I'd like to express my gratitude to the conference organizers, especially my good friend Dr. Muhammad Nawaz Tunio, for having me here. And let's go to the presentation. Thank you to all scholars who have presented their papers, but due to some technical issue, I cannot see most of the presentations, unfortunately, because of the slides did not present it well, or the voice was not very clearly heard. But basically, what I do not want to go through one by one, because from the three presenters, we have the same issues here. The first one is about the gaps, the research gaps. When you do your introductions, most of all that you should emphasize is what is the gaps that you try to fill, and that gaps will lead you to the next steps of your research. So unfortunately for the three presenters, I cannot see that. And next, about the literature review, actually you don't have to create a specific slides for literature review, and do not put definitions there, especially if you are postgraduate students who are presenting. You can use the gaps and then justify your gaps with past studies, and these past studies are taken from your literature review. And if you talk about literature review or past studies that we read we don't always look for the studies that is supporting our gaps, our research. You can also find the past studies that is opposed to your research. Why? Because if you have all past studies that is supporting your gaps, supporting your hypothesis, and at the end your hypotheses are all accepted, then what is the contribution of your research? So that's why you need to look for another side of the story too. So you can have a more rich, you can have a richer discussion inside your research. Okay, and then after listening to all of the presentations, I'd like to emphasize on one thing. I'm a practitioner. Before I joined academia, I'm more of a practitioner. So most of our concern about research results is every time we are presented with the results, results, we always say, okay, this is your research results. So what? So after you have done your conclusion, you have done recommendation, can you relate your research results with what happened to the industry, especially when your topic is really related to the business or to the industry? We cannot just give conclusions or recommendations that is something of a common sense. Okay, so some of the conclusions that I saw earlier belong to common sense, like we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to give trainings. Those are common sense, but those are not the new things that we can recommend to the industry, to the business world. So that is one of my humble suggestions to all of the presenters. So my simple thoughts and key takeaways from all of these presentations, that all of the topics here are meaningful and important, but what is more important is that how we can relate these research results into the industry and contribute something to the benefit of our society. And as researchers, as scholars, we cannot just stay comfortably in our Rapunzel tower. We cannot only stop here. We need to reach out to the industry. So this is also the homework for the organizers, to Dr. Nawaz. How can you bridge this gap between academics and industry? How can we bring the results of this conference to the benefit of the society involved? So I think due to the limitations of the technical problems, I cannot give more detailed inputs, but feel free to reach out if you need more comments from me. And I thank to all authors and presenters who have done a great job, especially if your students. So kudos to you. You have overcome all of the obstacles. It's not easy for us to present virtually. We have witnessed earlier connections problem that made us lose visual, made us lose audio. That is something that we have to overcome. So kudos to you. And again, I'd like to thank the committee for having me. And that's all from me. Stay healthy, and I give back the virtual screen to our moderator. So over to you, Mr. Salman. Assalamualaikum.